Welcome to Open Space. This is the last episode of the segment Black Lives Matter, where we have Black people and white people come together in a soluble discussion. Who wants to start off by introducing themselves?
Hi, I'm Sofia. I live in Long Beach, California, in the United States. I'm a photographer, and I just hope that from this I can learn more about the ways in which we're all different, but also the ways in which we're very much the same, and how to be a better ally to people with different struggles than my own.
I'm Nemin. I live in Chicago. I work in finance and technology. I'm looking forward to this conversation just to get a different perspective outside of our immediate groups that we normally talk to.
I'm Isaac. I'm from Chicago. I live in St. Louis now. I work in finance as well. I really just wanted to pick everyone's brain on, I guess, what would be the next steps forward. I guess there's a problem. We see that everyone's upset, but what is it that we're going to do? I guess to kind of see what everybody's agenda is.
Hi, everyone. I'm Abba. I'm a recent graduate. I work in politics. I'm also a co-founder of a London BLM group called Justice for Black Lives. We organize a lot of protests in Rashata. So yeah, I'm just excited to hear the conversation so we know kind of like how to progress and stuff. So yeah.
Lyra.
Hi everyone, I'm Lyra and I'm also from London. I work as a photographer and also in mental health. So kind of what I'm hoping to get from this is to hear the different perspectives. Like I think it's interesting to see how different our experiences are, even though there are some parallels. I guess I'm excited to hear more from different set of people.
Hi everyone, my name is Patrick. I am from Germany. I am 20 years old. I study at the university here in Munich to become a musician. And also I'm here today to hear other people's opinions and their views. And especially last time we were only white people, and today I'm excited since now we have both parties here, and also excited how we may find some solutions on how to tackle this issue.
Hi, I'm Peter. I'm a sound engineer, Reiki healer, writer, and musician. I'm here today to witness other people's experiences so I can integrate them into my own understanding of life, and then become a better ally in this movement.
Hi, my name is Dennis. I'm from Stuttgart, Germany. I'm a pastor. I'm here I'm interested in the different point of views and mindsets and see how we can find a solution together.
Yeah. And last but not least, Ashley.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley. I am from Chicago in the USA. And I'm a biology pre-med student. I'm about to graduate really soon. And my main takeaway that I think I want to get from this conversation is just hearing different identities and their experiences and how it shaped them thus far. Because I think usually, for the most part, I'm only speaking with people that are like-minded individuals, have the same experiences as me. So I'm really interested to see how those different experiences shape who you all are and your, perspective on the things that we see going around in the world today.
Okay, thank you. So we can get started then now, right? So let's just start off from basics. So what does the Black Lives Matter movement mean for you guys?
For me, if I see a white person that's like marching in the Black Lives Matter movement, it's a call for help or a call for change to something that they've seen from the inside. Because we can only make so much noise, and if everyone else isn't hearing it, them coming out to march with us shows them that okay, they're with us every day, but they still see this issue persist. They still benefit from it, and they still are trying to explain no, this is over the line. It's something very wrong going on, and they're trying to help in any way they know how.
Sofia?
I think for me, when I see Black people marching in the protests, if I see it's mostly Black people, I know there's somebody missing there. I've done a couple protests myself. We've been having a lot here in my city, and it is a very diverse crowd, but I've seen like on the news and stuff, like there are Black Lives Matter protests that it seems like it's only Black people, and I can't help but feel like there's people missing from that, because the people who are causing the problem aren't going to listen unless there's their type, their kind in that march. You know what I mean? Like if you're asking people to stop being racist, then those racist people aren't going to listen to the people they're oppressing in the first place. They need to hear it from the people that they respect or whatever they feel towards their own, you know? I don't know if that's the right way to say that, but I think it's just like your oppressor's never going to listen to you. They're going to listen to the people that they put on the same level as themselves. So when I see Black people only marching in the protests, I can't help but feel like there's somebody missing from that group.
I agree. I think what Sophia was trying to say was, because you said something along the lines of, I think what happens with an issue in terms of, you know, with racism or like being anti-racist, you can't make it a predominantly Black problem, because then people only see it as a Black issue. When you make it like a world issue, then people understand and receive it better. And that's why, like, we always talk about getting Black people or people of color, Black and brown, into white dominant spaces, because this is what's needed. But I mean, for me, in my experience in being London, because I also lived in America for school, like, so I lived in like DMV, so I wouldn't understand, but seeing as well how stuff occurs there too. But in UK right now, currently a protest, a lot of protests we've organized. We did one in Hyde Park, and there was like everyone, like a lot of people were there. Like it was mixed of Black and Black, brown, and let's say allies. I was called ally, and I feel like a lot now. There's a lot of protests that we've done. Majority of people who come are actually allies rather than Black people, and it's normally Black women over Black men. And I understand, and that was a whole other thing, because Black women just seem to be more vocal because we just, I don't know, it's quite sad.
Have to be.
Yeah, we have to be. And also we face double oppression in patriarchy and in racism. So, but they just seem to be more vocal. But that's what I've normally seen in protests in a lot that they do in London. So it's just, it's quite interesting. But I think it's also difficult because having these conversations as well is quite hard for the Black community, because this is a lot of trauma. We're like kind of regurgitating now that we're realizing people really don't care about our lives, and are now realizing, oh my gosh, a Black person matters. It's like, so it's a bit difficult, but it's really good to have uncomfortable conversation, because that's the only way you can move forward. So yeah.
In response to that last sentiment you said, I have like my core group of friends. Most of my friends are Black, but I have a couple of friends who are white. And when all of this started, which, you know, it's been going on forever, but when things really like took off here in the US with this particular moment, one of my white friends was like trying to speak to our other best friend who is Black, and she was like, how are you doing? How are you feeling about this? And my Black friend was like, I don't want to talk about this. Like, I'm so tired. And I was trying to get the white friend to be like, just stop, leave her alone. Like, she doesn't owe you an explanation. She doesn't owe you her, you know, stamp of approval on your allyship. And she was like, but I just want to make sure she's okay. And I'm like, she's not. She's a Black woman living in America. She's not okay. Like, stop asking her. And she couldn't wrap her head around that. And I think that the problem with that was she was making it about her and her allyship and where she stands in this movement. And it's like, it's not about you, dude.
Usually when I see white people are like Black Lives Matter protests or something like that, I often wonder, what is it exactly that you're protesting? Like, do you really understand what the conversation is about? Like, what are you there saying? I think that's something that when you start having conversations with allies, how in depth do you, like, what sort of depth do you take this to? Because it's easy to protest against the death of George Floyd when you can see that it's blatantly murder. But how about the nuanced things? That's really where, like, how about when it comes to actual policy? How do you affect those? Like, what do you understand to be the Black experience in the Western world, and what is it exactly that you're protesting? I think that's the main issue, because it's easy to regurgitate the surface level things, but you can't really be an ally at a surface level. That's not allyship to me. That's just following a trend. You know, you've got to really, so to speak, be willing to jump into the trenches. Like, are you really willing to lay down your lives to prove that Black Lives Matter? Because ultimately that's the sacrifice that Black people have to make. So if you're really an ally, it means you must be willing to go as far as I am in order to prove that you do believe that Black Lives Matter now.
Yeah, thanks for all these expressions. Yeah, what comes up for me is I guess the choice that white people have. You know, it's a privilege that they even have a choice whether they turn up or not. And I guess everyone has that choice to some degree, but I really feel like the system that we live under that oppresses everybody, but oppresses Black people more than white people, it's like dehumanizing. And I guess I really appreciate like what you said about trends and stuff. I do feel like in the social media age, that is a big problem. And I do also feel like it's the deep work that matters, you know, the healing work within white culture as well, because white culture is, it doesn't really understand itself in many ways. It's a hollow culture in many ways. And that's how the oppression gets systemized as well. So Sofia was saying, you know, this white person was trying to like understand her Black friend, but it's also like white people have to really start to understand themselves and how they hold up the oppressive system. And that to a big extent is like a part of being an ally is to join the marches and to join the movement, but also part of being an ally is to do the deep work within ourselves to understand how we hold up the oppressive system as well. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think Black Lives Matter is important because it is one of many justice movements that is calling out for justice. And I want to talk about this term allyship because I think with the topic, that is my opinion, with the topic racism, there is actually not really any sort of allyship because this is a problem we created and we still reproduce, and it is our fault that we live in a world where there exist racist ideologies. And even further, when we go back in time, there was like really racist hierarchies. And of course, you can support people that are affected with and try to comfort them and try to help them with their suffering. But in the first place, racism isn't really a Black issue. Like, it's an issue we created, Black people are suffering of. And I think this is what some people have to understand. At least I think the word allyship is not completely wrong. You try to support it, but once we would teach this subject in school and try to educate people, people would really understand that this is not an issue which was coming from nowhere. It was created. It was because people felt bad for raiding other countries. And I think then the term allyship is not really fitting into this topic anymore once people know what it's actually about. But this is just my opinion. I don't use this word.
Sorry, yeah, I was just touching on, I think what Sofia was saying about her friend, and this is what the issue is that I don't think people realize, is that when it comes to, you know, you said your friend was like not pressing but asking your other Black friend to speak. It's the issue where it's not us as Black people's job to educate you. This is stuff that, like, you know, I understand maybe she's like, you know, a lot of my friends recently since it's come out, they've been messaging me like, I feel really bad for you and I feel sorry. This is not an issue that I don't need empathy, you know, I need action. So all this doesn't do anything. All it does is stir up trauma emotions that, like, you're sad for me, but you don't think you can do anything, you know? So that's the issue in terms of that. But this is when you have to disalign yourself and understand in terms of the difference between performative allyship and authentic, you know? Because there's some people that do it because, as you know, like, you know, it's like a Charles' trend right now, like, you know, they'll put pictures and they'll post like, you know, arrest the cops, like, it's just like performative. But then you've got actual authentic allyship, and that's like not just coming to protest, because I think protest is good, but unfortunately protest will eventually die down. It's a direct action in legislation that will protect Black people and advocate for them. So when I'm talking about like authentic, that's like, you know, making sure you're supporting movements online, making sure people are aware, making sure, you know, you're you're basically giving back and benefiting in a way the Black community, that's authentic. So that's if you're going to do that. And a lot of people don't realize as well, as a white person, you need to kind of unlearn the unconscious biases that you have, because you may be like, I'm an ally, but there's many unconscious biases that a lot of my friends didn't realize they had. And that's it's a lot of unlearning right now. It's education and unlearning. So that's just something people have to take in mind. So yeah.
But I feel like here, the biggest thing is that we want allies to come in and help, but I feel like it's just the joining of the Black people here. It's hard because it's not all on one page. It's not all one accord. There's no real centralized leadership to tell us, okay, this is what, this is us as Black people in America, this large percentage, this is what we want. There's no directive. There's no list of demands where we can go to legislation and say that this is what we want. To have allies come in, it's like we're inviting you into an unsettled kind of, party. Like when we get organized, we're asking for what we need right now are funds. What we need right now are infrastructure. What we need right now are opportunities to set up, the infrastructure for the Black people here, because for so long you told us no. And then when we did do it, you killed us.
It's true. Can I respond? Should I respond to that?
Yeah.
No, I completely understand. Oh, okay. I don't know if I wanted to. I was going to respond to you. I understand what you're saying, but I think if you're, this is what the issue with BLM is, though. Or our organization, we don't say. Well, look, organizations in UK don't say BLM. We say Black Liberation because it's just better. But the difference with, like, for example, with BLM or for example Black Lives Matter, it's a case where, like, in general, it's not really good to have a leadership. When you have leadership, that's the downfall, because then dictatorship can rise. Like when you're part of BLM, that's like anti-capitalist, that's it's like no centralized power. So I understand how you're saying it is difficult, because even in UK, we have a BLM UK page and we speak to them regularly, but like they also are just a hub. They don't organize stuff. So it's very difficult. People are like, oh, there's no leadership. But this is why it's very hard in the Black community, because we have a difficulty with unification. But that's not because of us. That stems from a social and historical context where we've been divided from years ago. We've been divided.
But I'm saying that's for me, I feel like that's what we should solve first. Don't you feel like as a whole we should be allowed to heal, to at least understand each other and get on one accord before we can ask anyone else to help? You know what I'm saying? All we need is the space, the opportunity, and the cushion, you know what I'm saying, to build ourselves a infrastructure that we wanted in the way that we desire, so that we can understand each other and get our demands out to everyone else.
Yeah, I understand. I just think it's going to be, it's very difficult because it's literally indoctrinated now. It's passed down from family members. It's passed down from friends. It's like in our head, and it's difficult, that unification. And I understand what you're saying, because no foundation, it's like you can't build a house without having strong foundation. It doesn't work, It doesn't work. So you need to have that foundation, but it's very difficult because we've been somewhat brainwashed, a lot of us, and it's very difficult for a lot of people to like kind of be like, oh, it's like I've seen a lot of bad people, like people even we support BLM in UK, and we're like, oh, we support this, but we don't support the LGBT community. We support this, and it's all just like, it's never going to work. So what needs to happen, what we do now is a lot of people put through demands. In UK, we're trying to have a collective coalition, so everyone puts through the same demand, so it's clear. Yeah. But it's difficult getting everyone on the same page.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. When it comes to the question, for me, it's an opportunity, because everything that Abba said already and Isaac said already, I think the biggest opportunity that we have as a Black community is the first thing, to educate ourselves, because through education, you can empower people to do the right action for the near future. Because if there's no education, if there's no communication, if there's no exchange, and I do believe, because here in Germany, I do believe from history saying we are the youngest Black community compared to UK, USA, or other countries. And it's a chance, it's an opportunity for all of us to educate the white community, because most of them, they don't know what to do, to be frankly speaking. If they join us in whatever we do, BLM and all those stuff, they don't know really how to be our supportive, give us opportunity, etc., etc. So I think
what they do for the
this
animals.
is my opinion.
Whatever they do to save the animals, when it's time to save whales and it's time to save penguins, and don't kill Harambe, they ally together, they have petitions, there are marches, they stop going places. Do that for us.
If I can just
I
jump
beg
in
you.
there, I think there's always the threat of infantilizing white people and saying, oh, they don't know. Like, that's not true. Like, how many white people do you know who are actively involved in political campaign? Like, like, it's not new to them. It's not news to them. They don't they do understand what injustice is. But there's always this
I
feeling that
know.
we should slightly allow them leeway. Like, your privilege has rendered you what, like a child. That's not true. If anything, your privilege has put you in a position where you understand things way better socially than we do. You have better education, facts. You have better jobs, facts. Like, you literally, your quality of life is significantly superior to ours. So how can you then expect me to educate you on what should be standard? Do you know what I mean? Sorry, I need to plug my laptop in, so I'm gonna have to turn off my video in a sec. Sorry about that.
Sophia, you raised your hand.
Yeah.
I did, but Lyra basically said exactly what I was gonna say. It's like, I've seen white people show up for causes across the board that they knew exactly how to fight for it. They knew exactly what to say and how to get things done. Those were just causes that affected them. So I think that white people know what to do. We just need to either get them to care about this one or to overpower them, because if they cared, they would be doing it. If they cared, they'd be open to these kind of conversations. If they cared, they would be voting for Black people. If they cared, they'd be shopping at Black businesses. But all they do is post a Black square on their Instagram and they say that my job has been done. And that's not enough. No one's going to change their mind because the person they followed on Instagram posted a Black square. Like, that's not enough.
Oh, Ashley, go ahead.
There's something I'm noticing here, and that I think we all can agree on. It's like kind of what Lyra and, if I'm saying it right, I'm sorry, Lyra and Sofia, what they're saying is that we give white people this leeway, we give them this grace, but then at the same time we say Black people, we're not together enough. So how do we expect ourselves to do anything? It's almost like this paradigm that we're dehumanizing and criminalizing Black people for this lack of union and infrastructure, but at the same time we're saying, well, white people don't know, so we need to educate them. There's this idea that white people can have that grace and Black people can't. And also, I used to have this really big issue with like Black people being on the same page. I used to always get so frustrated because I would feel like we're not on the same page, we're not together. But I also realized like that not everyone is here for that fight. Not everyone will have the same fight as me. So if you are a Black person, but you're directly against LGBTQIA, then you're not that Black person for me. And if you're a Black person that wants to fight for Black Lives Matter, but not fight for women, then you're not for my Black fight. So it's just, we have to realize that we got to stop fighting people and forcing people to be on the same page as us, because it isn't necessary. We don't need every Black person. We don't need every white person to get things done. And so this sentiment that white people can have this leeway, but Black people can't have the same leeway is anti-Black. And as Black people, we can infiltrate that as well. And as white people, we can infiltrate that. That's really what it boils down for me, is basically breaking down anti-Blackness that is rooted from white supremacy. And it's necessary from both parties to realize that as well. As Black people, there is some unlearning that we need to do. Hence the idea, we need to do some unlearning on both parties, but also realize like the anti-Blackness that is involved with this unlearning from both parties.
I understand your point to be like, when you talk about all Black people being on the same page, why is it that Black people are always forced to be the sort of monolith? And this is coming from an LGBTQI person. When I speak to other Black people and they talk about Black liberation and leave me out of it, I don't automatically think I need to leave this person out of my campaign. My belief, my Black liberation doesn't leave people out because they do not politically align with me. Now, when they reach the point where they can affect policy and actively affect how I'm able to live and express myself, now that's where my problem lies. But if you diversity of thought is always something that we should encourage into the movement. I think that's why it's also so hard to have this centralized campaign thing, because at that point, you're electing people as vocal pieces for you. And you just have to look, it sort of feeds into this idea of celebrity or like this idea that some people are more qualified to speak on our behalf than others. And that's, if anything, that's been a huge detractor from what we've been trying to build, because then we start allowing people who have prominent voices to speak on our behalf, when the truth is they do not actually fight for what we are fighting for. Like, you end up with someone like Jay-Z surrounded by a group of billionaires telling you if he had a father in his household, maybe the police wouldn't have stopped him as much because he would have been more respectful of authority. When we know that police brutality is not an issue of authority or respect for authority thereafter. Because I'm around a lot of Black people, and when the police come, we stay pim. Like, we know how to speak to the police. And when you start putting these people in these spaces, there's no way to regulate them. There's no way to them hold them accountable, because you've elected them as some sort of de facto leaders. And now they are representing you when they do not represent you. So diversity of thought is welcome, but you can't then elevate these people above others and then assume that that's being on the same page, because that would just, that's a very, very, very historically easy way to make sure that your pro-Black movement is co-opted into being something that that doesn't represent you,
Lyra, no, I definitely agree. Like, diversity of thought is always welcome. When I was saying like electing these leaders, I'm not saying that they have some type of elevated control. They're figureheads that are there to voice and get the demands that we have set forth through. Somebody has to have that one-on-one conversation with somebody's congressman. I'm not saying that it's one person, maybe one person per state, one person per, region, where we're electing people of the Black populace here in the state of Illinois. This person is going to act as our Black congressman, and he's going to say, these are the list of demands from these boroughs, these 10 boroughs, these are the problems with the Black people here. They're underemployed. Some people have bad housing. Some people are food deserts. We have so many different problems in different places. We can't have one overall agenda for all of America.
May I ask, so you're essentially saying you keep essentially the campaigning should happen on a local level and you have someone to be the vocal piece?
Because that's the only place we can directly call accountable. I can't tell you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the thing about that is you essentially start to force yourself to adapt to a system that wasn't there to cater to you in the first place. Because I can assure you, we have Black MPs, we have in the UK, we have Black MPs, we have Black councillors. How many of them, I don't know, Abba, you're from London. How many of them would you say represent your interests?
And I want to go into
and these are people who ran on a campaign of Blackness. Literally, it hasn't worked. I think the thing is, like, we're looking at the system and we're somehow seeing that the system is going to one day work for us. We can elect people who'd be able to, and it's never going to. Like, I can't go into someone's house and then just change the layout. It's not going to happen. Like, that system
that's true.
It's not going to bend to you. So I think that's so I completely understand what you're saying, but I don't think what you're saying can be implemented in a political structure like the one that exists.
Oh, sorry, you go.
No, really quickly, I have to say I agree with Isaac. I don't necessarily, I think he was presenting an example as far as legislation is concerned and as far as like focusing on the state of Illinois. I think historically, when you pay attention to the civil rights movements that have come before this actual movement, there's always been someone in the forefront, whether it was Martin Luther King or Malcolm X or W.E.B. Du Bois, whoever. There's always someone that kind of stood and said, hey, this is what we want, that's overarching. Right now, if you really pay attention to how the movement is moving, whether it's in America or everywhere else, it's almost like everyone is spouting something. Some people are saying, hey, like, recognize women more. Some people are saying, hey, trans lives matter. Some people are saying, hey, don't kill us in this way. Like, it's almost like there's just so many different narratives being thrown that even if I wasn't a part of, like, if I wasn't a Black person, if I was honestly a white person, that was one of the questions that I wanted to pose to them. Are you guys confused at all? Do you guys truly understand what it is that we're asking for? Or do you feel like there's a whole bunch of different narratives being thrown at you all at once with an expectation of you to stand up and fight for all of them? If we don't have a clear, concise vision, it's really hard to say, hey, join us on this mission that we're on, and this is where we're going. If you don't know where you're starting from and where you're heading, what's the journey?
Well, I think that there's just an intersection of a lot of issues here. So to align on something and say that this is exactly what we're going to fight for, I think that ignores that there's so many, I'm trying not to cuss, there's so many messed up things that are going on. So obviously we want to fight for one thing, but you can look at a plethora of issues because we are in a system that definitely was never designed for Black people, wasn't designed for women, it was definitely not designed for trans people. So I think that it's hard to just say, hey, we're just going to fight for this one thing, because I agree that the whole thing needs to be dismantled. I don't think that it can work the way that it is. But how exactly do you do that? Then you're putting an issue onto a system without having any strategy to actually dismantle that. So I think whenever we say, like, you know, like the whole entire system, the society that we live in is the issue, which is, it's true, but then how do you actually make actionable steps to overcome that? I think you just put it's like this ambiguous idea that you're putting blame on, which doesn't actually, like, you can't actually put fault on anybody. You can't actually fix that, because you're going after like an identity, or like a just a system. So I don't have any answer to it, but I think that there's multiple things that we have to navigate, and I think that it's hard to work through all those problems when we're doing so in a system that wasn't designed for really anybody other than the white man, honestly. So
I like what you just said, as far as it's really hard to go after something when it's not something specific, right? We're like, for example, we talked about this whole dismantle the police or defund the police situation. That was a specific action that we wanted to see take place. And then we can go ahead and say, okay, we expect our mayors and our Congress people and whoever sets up those budgets to go ahead and make sure that they're taking a portion of those funds to give to education, to give to lower income households, to put in other places outside of the police. That is a direct action that we can actually pay attention to and keep trends with, right? But it's kind of more difficult when you're saying, oh, well, it's systemic racism. We all know the racism is systemic. The Constitution is racist. Everything that essentially builds our nation is racist, right? But we have to have a specific way that we want to go about it. Otherwise, it's kind of all over the place. That's my argument. I'm not saying that we need to focus on, oh, we don't want police officers killing our Black men or our Black women anymore. There's just so many different pieces of it. We need to have one concise vision, whether it's our, I don't know, our memorandum or our, I don't even know the word for it. There needs to be one something that says this is what we're going for and this is how we'd like to see it done, type of thing.
I totally agree with that. And like the defunding of the police was something that was, you could like target that and be like, this is an issue, obviously, because we have all these statistics. And like the first thing we have to do is take away like so much financial power and put it somewhere else where people can actually like get ahead in society, right? But then like you're from the US, so you know that everything becomes then political, like everything's political. So then all of a sudden something that's for human rights becomes either a Democratic or a Republican issue, and the Democrats want to defund the police, but then the Republicans don't. And it's just this, I think that things here are deliberately made onto party lines to divide people. And I felt like we were having some headway with defunding the police because it literally makes sense. Like, it obviously was before George Floyd, but everybody saw that video and was like, oh, there's something wrong here, you know, like this isn't how people should be acting. But then instead of our government wanting to bring people together to better everybody together, and again, I'm blaming it on like this idea and this system that isn't really tangible. Like defunding the police is an obvious solution, but I just feel like in our political environment that we're always constantly like being pushed against each other, and like these very like clear goals, but these actionable steps are like deliberately like muddled up between political talks and things like that. I don't know if I'm making much sense, but I feel like the defunding the police was like a definite thing that then like got destroyed to political.
No, I definitely agree. I feel like there are very big items that were talked about where like they got a lot of attention and they got kind of ran over. Like Flint, Michigan still has a water crisis. It's been like 5 years. Like a whole portion of Michigan has no healthy water in America. Like it's not clean. You have people in America, a first world country, living in third world conditions for half a decade. The people that killed Breonna Taylor, you know their names, you know their faces, you know where they work, you know how much they make, you know where they live, but they walk free. George Zimmerman is still alive. So it's that there's not actual items, it's that we yell, we scream, we beg, we plead. And then you can't resort to violence or force because that would be the next option. Historically, like in the history of the US, there were protests, there were tea parties, then there was a war. We tried our war, they killed us, we lost. Like, so the only thing logical is like now, do we repeat that cycle of, okay, we're gonna rise up again, the world's smaller, You know, maybe we have some backup. Like, who do we reach out to? We don't have a country to offer them. Like,
I think when it comes to, I understand what you're saying, and I agree. I think when it comes to these more specific situations like Breonna Taylor and some of these other people that have lost their lives due to the police ineffectively doing their job, for example, this Breonna Taylor thing in particular, it's really hard for them to go ahead and arrest those people because they were given an order by their superiors who were given an order by their superiors. So getting those people arrested or in trouble or whatever it would also be to take those people as well into custody. And they're not going to do that, unfortunately. They're not going to say, okay, we messed up. We're going to take accountability for our actions. So they're going to allow us to keep talking over and over again. And if you pay attention, whenever something like this happens, and they don't necessarily, like George Zimmerman, whenever he killed Trayvon Martin and he didn't get in trouble, how did it make the Black community feel? It's almost like another slap in the face. It's almost like we're putting you back in your place so you understand that you really don't matter. You can beg, you can plead, you can protest, you can do whatever it is you want to do. Until we are ready to do something, we're not going to do it. So stay in your place and recognize that we have the power to do this to you. That's almost how it feels. So it's almost like reinitiating or reconfirming that racism, or reconfirming that slavery mentality. It's like, we control this system, you don't. You're even lucky that we let you walk amongst us and work with us and do all these different things. That's how it feels. So for us to...
Oh no, I was just saying, I even forgot my point. Oh, it's in my head again. I think what Shelby was saying is right, but like, you know, in the UK as well, we also have a problem like that. But like, I feel like with BLM in general, because I had a hard, what's the word? I had basically, when I was learning stuff and educating myself more and being more well versed, I realized that BLM in general, or just the Black liberation, or whatever you call it, is always going to be, everything's political. Because really, when you're saying when you're saying it's political, it's because it comes from you wanting to implement changes, that like results from, I don't know, advocating for Black people. That's all political, you know. So it's sad that, like, I see in US, even living there, it was the same where it's like, oh, it's a left issue, it's a right issue, but then technically it is, because when you deep it, if you're really for BLM, it is technically like left, and I don't just mean left, I mean it's borderline socialist, because you're dismantling the system to rebuild a new one, you know. And I don't think people understand in their head what that means. And it's literally like, obviously, I think what Lyra is saying is right, where, you know, a system can't fail those who was never designed to protect. So when you take the system, for example, in terms of the police, what I forgot her name, I think it's Nemin, was saying is the issue where, oh, if you want to arrest this police, you go arrest this. It's hard with police in general because police have police immunity. We all know this. There's police immunity inside of their contracts, which means that when a cop is arrested, there's actually laws that protect them from being arrested. So that's why, like, I know in America, you sue the city, not sue the police. You know, you've seen that count. Yeah, or same as in UK, you don't sue the political police, you sue the city. So it's very, very, very difficult. And this is just all the issues. But I understand Shelby saying that you're confused. In UK, we right now have a list of demands we try to get through with all the scoops. We talk with BLM on the reg to make sure it's all the clear mandate. But the issue is that your own, like, for example, me as someone, for example, in the LGBT community, I'm Black, that's what I'll be advocating for. Everyone has different experiences. That's why it's very difficult in this movement, because someone will come in as Black, but they're Black and Jewish. Someone's Black and disabled. They're coming to bring in what they want to improve themselves. That's why it's difficult in terms of a collective, but you need those individual experiences, because, you know, the voices of the power of those of many voices is quite powerful. I can't explain that. And also, I understand it can be very difficult when you hear all these I don't know, all these legislation people are trying to implement, but like stuff like, we say the same, but I don't say defund. We say diverse the police, because people get really off when you hear defund. It's like they shut down. They don't want to hear it. And it's very simple, because it's like defunding the police, you're literally taking money out of the police budget, because in UK it's the second biggest institution with like 2 billion, you know, it's a lot of money. And you're telling me that money, some of them can't go into, you know, women's refugees, youth services, because we know that economic inequality and material deprivation constitutes a crime, you know. And these are just so many issues, but that people just can't see it. And it is because, you know, they realize it's right and they don't want to see it. So what we ask them is for is for like a police budget, because in UK the transparency of the Met Police budget, we can't see it. We actually don't know how much money is going in. That's very suspicious. So if we could see it, we could like find a way to like show them this is how it'll be if we're putting the money into that, because there's a lot of austerity cuts in UK. There's a lot of, you know, women in, you know, Black women, sexual assault, domestic violence, who are homeless right now, social housing through COVID, NHS, medical racism. Oh, it's just too many problems. So it's just like, this is the stuff we're advocating for. I know it seems like a lot, but it's like there's so many things that's a problem. That's why everyone's writing it. That's why all this stuff has come up. I don't know if that was a lot.
So I agree. I agree that I don't think that you could literally fight for like one singular problem, because there's so many things that go into it. There's so many issues that intersect that I don't think that you could possibly achieve justice by just being like, hey, we're going to focus on this one thing right now because there's so many injustices. So I totally agree with what you're saying. But while we were talking, though, I was just questioning, is it possible to have equality and justice in a capitalist society? Can those two things even go in hand?
I mean, you know, it's very difficult, because even me, because I'm just like, you know, it's very, because I basically was talking about this with like other scholars, and I was thinking to myself, you know, because capitalism, you know, we're in like a neoliberalist world. So like basically the market right now it's like very self-interested. It's difficult. So it's a hard one, but I personally don't believe you can, because as I said, BLM is anti-capitalist, because BLM is, you have to mobilize local communities, you have to support, what's the word? Not support, you have to, it affects, it's not just a Black issue, it's an issue where it's a class as well. It's like many things. So it's a class issue, and the class issue stems from the economic disparity that comes from capitalism. So it's just a problem. And so I just don't think capitalism is a way that it can work. As I said, it's literally borderline social. That's the only way. It's only if it can be a left wing way. That, I don't know if that makes sense. So yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. Thanks, Abba. Like the socialist thing is really interesting, because like what I'm hearing is, how do we open up a space within the current system that we can be valued? And it's like, well, I don't, you know, it's like, are you worth more than that tiny little space that you can maybe carve out of this intense like power oppression space? It's like, for me, it's like the way that the oppression is systematized is like control, condemn, and crush, right? And it's like, you know, we these are traumas, and you can't heal traumas from those spaces. You can't heal traumas from individualist spaces. You can't heal traumas where your incentive is monetary, you know, only. You know, traumas are healed in community. And I like the idea of like this socialist movement, but I'm really interested in your thoughts about how that might look for you guys, like, because I can't have those perspectives, but I see this movement as a socialist movement, because this system is broken. It's producing trauma, it's producing unhealthy behavior. I'm interested in your perspectives on that. I'd love to hear them.
Question, how can we transform our system? I think one central question we can ask ourselves is, why do rich people have like the ability to access to more resources than poor people do? Like we could transform a system. Just because capitalism doesn't work doesn't mean we have to go to socialism. This is all human-made systems. We can create new ones. And even people like Karl Marx or Lenin or Engels never really had any answers on how do we share our resources together. And we are all born into this world. We are all equal humans in this society. Why should anyone have more access to those limited resources? And there, I think we can connect, like, we have huge problems with our environment and how globalization works, and globalization and racism work hand in hand. And when we think about it like that, we can change it. We really need a system change, really from the bottom. So, and I think what Abba said was like really perfect. when she mentioned this system is not created to protect people. This system only serves them who are already in power. So we also have to question, why do rich people have power? What exactly gives them power? Because they deliver value to our society? Is it really delivering value when you're just like sitting on a stock market and watching your money rise? And I think we have to rethink on why do people have power and how do we share our resources together, and that money and power do not really have any impact on that.
Can I just add something? Because I just, you know, when I talk about BLM on this being social, that's because that's how it is. But if you were saying in terms of how we can use this system now, technically, I mean, the best way to do that was to adopt a Scandinavian model. So Scandinavian countries such as like Eastern European countries, or not Eastern European, such as like Sweden, Norway, Denmark, people are happy there. And let me tell you why, because they pay.
But they have also
but they're not. No, exactly. I'm not saying they're socialists. I'm saying how can they use this system to like the system now to like if we use a system now, for example, in this society, rather than being socialist. So I said one option is to adopt the Scandinavian model, because like they did like, for example, they pay high taxes. People who are like really rich and you know, I don't know. But anyway, they pay high taxes, and that goes into like public expenditure, which means a lot of their school system, they're one of the best school systems. They have a very low reoffending rate in their prison system, because I think it's like 1%, because the housing, guys, the housing in the prisons it literally is like social, it's like nice housing. Like they make you feel like you have to be rehabilitated, you know. It's very, very good. They put so much money into women's refugees. They put money into basically to support the people, and that's those countries like that, like Iceland, like Sweden, like, you know, that's why they have a lot of change. That's why even Iceland, they had, I think if I'm correct, in 1986, they had like a protest because women weren't getting enough pay. So all the women who worked literally stopped working. And then they, in 5 years after, they had like a Women's Act, which meant that there was maternity leave and paternity leave, which then bridged the economic, basically the gender pay gap, which means now they're one of only 2 countries in the world, same as Rwanda, because of it was due for genocide stuff, because of Rwanda, that have, you know, a gender pay, that are more equal, you know, in terms of gender pay. So that's all. I'm just saying that's something that we can adopt. What we need is aggressive politics. Aggressive politics is the only way that this can really be full. That's why when people say statements like defund the police, it's an aggressive politics, but it works because that's a way we're already taking money from that system. We're saying you're not protecting us, so we're gonna take that money, we're gonna protect ourselves, kind of thing. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying. If you're saying from a system now, that's a way to adopt it. So yeah.
Where I think Black Lives Matter is important, because they can pressure politicians who are in the position of power, and people can push. They are not completely powerless. They can form policies by showing politicians what is actually important, because especially in countries where you have huge differences between poor people and rich people, how can rich people make policies for poor people? But the problem is all the politicians are rich. They have money. They don't know what the issues are looking like for people that struggle with poverty.
If I could just make 2 points. First, what Abba said, the Scandinavian model works because they essentially outsource their capitalism. So what they do is they implement a very socialist approach towards social liberties to the population that live in their country, but then they tend to then outsource their businesses to other countries and implement really exploitative models on African country and other Western countries. So that isn't a system that I ever prop up, because it's one that's basically saying, I'm going to take my capitalism and do it elsewhere so you can then benefit from the socialism. Secondly, to Patrick's point, I think saying that you can pressure politicians know what we're talking about. Like, they know what we're talking about. We have a healthy like politician base over here that come from working class environments, and then they very quickly change their tune when they're part of the elite. The elite shouldn't exist. That's essentially what we're saying here. The elite shouldn't exist. Not rather let's pressure them to then like trickle down economics or like, you know, stuff like that. That's not they know what we're talking about. They absolutely understand. When Boris Johnson stands there and speaks to the NHS and says, oh, when I caught coronavirus and I thought I was going to die, I felt so, he spoke very highly of the NHS then, and then proceeded to refuse to give any of the doctors any pay rises, even though he saw the conditions under which they have to work. Why are we letting, they can't continue to exist. That's ultimately what we're saying over here. And we cannot go to a Scandinavian model. Please, God, no.
Period.
Please,
No,
God,
but this, to be honest, I get what you're saying about Scandinavia, but I only meant it in the sense where what they do in their country. I understand when I learn, because right now I'm learning more about colonialism, especially in Africa, in countries in Africa, because me, myself, Ghanaian, Nigerian, don't worry, I know, do you know what I mean? I'm in Ghana all the time, don't worry. So I've even been realizing that, because even right now, people don't know there's a colonial bill that a lot of French-speaking countries have to pay to France because of slavery. You need to be woke about this stuff. And what you're saying is right, it's elitist. It's a class issue. It's literally a class issue. And it's like, we shouldn't have, having billionaires is an issue in society, because it literally disrupts everything. It messes, like, I can't explain it, like, how do you word it? Like, when you think of like the exploitation that a billionaire has to be a billionaire, is disgusting. So you're completely right by what you're saying. It needs to be that we shouldn't have elites, but it's hard because we're in an elitist society, and we're those people who, because you're elected representative or because you're prime minister, it's that cultural hegemony. It's that issue where they adopt that culture, they become I don't know, a prime minister, and then they have to adhere to that culture that's in that. And it's just very difficult, and it's just difficult for me, and it makes me sad. But you were saying, that's like in the UK, where it's like they're adopting, it's like they'll say, oh, austerity cuts, but why is the austerity cuts on the most vulnerable people? Like, tell me why. So why is it on always women and black and brown people and disabled? Like, it's just a bit mad. And even what you were saying with the NHS in UK is terrible, because as many of you guys know, the NHS in UK is like, it's our service and it's free. It's a health service. Obviously, some parts are privatized, but it's mainly free. So I can just walk into a hospital and get checked out. It's fine. But like the same MPs, or the same Boris Johnson, he was clapping for the NHS, like, oh my God, they saved me so much. And you're the one who voted against the clause that protects the NHS from being privatized. Make it make sense. Like, this is the issue. Like, these elected representatives are not for us. And it's so sad, because you get into that system and then you're climbing the greasy pole because then you're self-interested and you're not for the people who elected you in the first place. That's the issue, It's terrible.
When we talk about the elites, and one thing I often hear come up is people describe them as a cancer, and people might say, you might be reviled by that term, because you think of a cancer, you think of something quite violently, like it's basically a death sentence essentially. But it's, from a scientific point of view, it's probably the most apt comparison you can make, because the whole thing about a cancer is it's an unwanted collection of cells that essentially hemorrhage the resources. Essentially, it's an unneeded, unwanted collection of cells that hemorrhage resources that should be going towards other vital organs, because it provides you with no benefit, and yet seems to prioritize itself in terms of how it takes nutrients and essentially blood from you. And when you look at it in terms of, like, you talk about these billionaires and huge elites, what they do is they hemorrhage wealth. Like, they hoard it to the extent that it cannot flow through society. So when you say someone like Jeff Bezos is worth 100 million, but pretty much half of that is in terms of stocks, that's not arguing for billionaires. You can't just say, oh, it's just in assets. The whole thing about assets is they can't be then redistributed, because they're collated to a specific person, and they aid society in no way. So essentially, you're taking out and out and out and putting minimal back in. So if we really want to talk about like how to start, evening out that wealth gap, maybe some aggressive taxing of the top 1% is the most logical place to start.
Tax all of them. I'm joking. I'm joking. No, but you're completely, literally, what you said is completely right. It's very difficult. And even, a lot of people don't know this, and it's quite crazy. Like, a lot of the way, people, like the rich, like and I'm talking about billionaires, they find ways to keep their money. So when they say, oh, like, for example, you think of, I forgot his name, the Morehouse guy. Is it Smith? Richard Smith? Something? The guy donated, I'll pay everyone's debt in 2019. Who's that? Robert.
Yeah, Robert
Yeah.
Smith.
So you're like, wow, that's amazing. When actually it's something called like a charity tax. So like what you just do is it's in a in that fund.
But he could have gave it somewhere else. That's what
yeah,
we're
of course. And so
but
it's great
Jeff
that he
Bezos
paid
doesn't pay taxes. Amazon does not pay taxes.
And same Mark Zuckerberg and people from Starbucks. Don't go to Starbucks, guys. I don't go to places that don't pay taxes.
Yeah, they don't. So
they don't pay.
I understand what y'all are saying there. The only question is not even the question. Like you guys had to answer tax the 1% heavily.
High.
A 20% tax on
20%.
Okay. But you guys have to know.
I'm talking about additional.
No, in UK, it's actually once you hit 150,000 a year, it's 45% tax. Yeah.
So you guys have to understand that the system in the United States has got people thinking, oh, if they could do it, I can do it. And so now people who are living much closer to the line of poverty are advocating to keep billionaires around. I see people fighting, like defending Jeff Bezos, and I'm like, you will never be a billionaire. You are closer to losing your house than you are to owning a 72-bedroom mansion. So why are you supporting this? Stop it.
No, what it is the myth of meritocracy. Let me tell you that, because I did a whole little talk on that. That one makes me angry as hell. Because what meritocracy does is it tells you, oh, you came from a poor background, but you can work really hard, you can go to Princeton. Like, no, like not everyone can do that. That's what, when you see these bloody, not billionaires, these people like, for example, Diddy, and he's like, you know, I worked really hard and look at me now. That's you. That's you. You did that. Well done for you, but that's you. You know, it's not, and people don't realize that it's not every single person could do that. There's, you know, a lack of, like, for example, in UK, you know, I know it's London, but even London, there's a different experience with being in London and living outside. You know, when you live in areas like Birmingham or like Bolton or other areas that have like high economic disparity, it's those people that have resources. Like in my school, I was lucky enough from year 7 to get a laptop. We have laptops throughout school. You know, you have a laptop throughout, and that's a resource. Not everyone has that privilege. Not everyone has access to like internet and have a phone. You know, that's all the issue. And so that's what meritocracy does. It tells you, you know, I watched this show and this guy came on. He must have missed his. He got a university degree, got a 2-1, which is really good in UK, but he got first, sorry. And they were asking him, oh, are you trying to apply for a job? He's like, I didn't get the job, but next time I'll work harder. But it's like that's indoctrinating him, that he felt like he has to work harder in order to get the job, which means, but it's not the fact that he didn't really think to himself, it's the fact that the job wasn't even designed for him to have it in the first place, you know what I mean? But he's thinking, oh, I just have to work hard and I'll get it. And it's sad.
Even if it wasn't meant for us, because I definitely understand what you're talking about, because I tell people all the time, it's like, knowing me is knowing 3 people.
Yes, networking.
No, just not even just networking, just knowing me alone is knowing 3 people. Because the Isaac I am at work compared to the Isaac I am at home, compared to the Isaac I'm allowed to be with my family, is 3 different people. And it's not because I want that. Nobody wants to have to always have 3 different hats or 3 different masks. But the only way I can be successful in the system that's already placed is if I'm 3 people. I can't be as Liberian as I am at work as I am at home. I just cannot.
Yeah.
But having the opportunity and knowing that when he says like, oh, he felt bad, is because he knew that one of his hats that he tries to wear often, he thought he was doing a very good job at doing, something went wrong. He don't know what slipped through the cracks. He doesn't know what he said that he shouldn't have said. He doesn't know if he shook the man's hand too long. He doesn't know what's going on. Was his tie crooked? Was it not the right tie? Was the suit color wrong? Was his shoes not matching? He had black shoes with a blue suit. Like, seriously, these are things that are running through our head often. And it's not because, oh, these are things that we care about. No, I could have came in here and I promise you a tech fit mics and I would have been still as competent, but you didn't care to see that.
Yeah. I just think it's difficult with I get on something you're saying, but I just think that's why I word it as a myth of meritocracy, because I don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say like everything was an issue. Like, I'm not saying maybe he just wasn't suited for the job, but it's just the way he said on several occasions, like, he'd been looking for a year. And I just see that with a lot of people, especially me as a recent graduate, like graduated this year actually. So when I hear people talk about oh, I couldn't get this job because I wasn't worth it, like I wasn't, and then it starts coming in your psyche, and then you think, oh, I didn't do a good enough job, when actually that wasn't the case. That's the issue. This is the issue we talk about, is like having those lack of resources, having, as you said, lack of funding, all contributes to like how someone's upbringing or, you know, experience is. You know, I have a lot of friends that went to like private schools, for example, and for them, that was good for them because they had resources and they got connections. It's all, you know, it's a whole cultural gag of me. And what I mean by that is like, when you go, you start learning. This is what it is because in the education system, it's a middle class agenda, right? So you need to learn that agenda and able to succeed, if you understand what I mean, because it's not an agenda that's for working class people. So if you're able to catch on, for example, go into a school where everyone else is speaking that kind of same language, that's how you're more well versed. That's what I mean by the lack of resources. Like if you went to a school that didn't have those resources, or didn't have, or was like a low school, in a low social economic background, you're not able to get those same resources. You're not able to get that head start. You're already starting at a wrong place. You know, it even stems from when you do SATs, or when you do, in UK, we have verbal and non-verbal reasoning. That's all middle class. I only knew that because I had a tutor. So that's how I knew it. A lot of my other friends didn't know what that was. You see, this is all resources that if you were given, it would have benefited you in your experience, and it would have affected and increased your social mobility. You see, it's just very difficult.
Yeah.
So, you know,
because it's one of the things that I guess I feel like I got from being like having foreign parents in America, like coming home and my mom's telling me wood is hard, life is difficult. You can't come in and tell me, oh, I took a test, it was hard. No, wood is hard, life is difficult. Understand the difference. Like having that training at home made a lot of difference, because then I see my friends at school that don't have those opportunities, or the fact that I have to take a bus because no matter where we live, there's some type of IB program or magnet school in an area around us that you're going to find a way to get accepted into. If we have to study all summer, if I have to sign up and get some type of grant, if you have to be on a scholarship, something's going to happen. But the problem is that here people aren't educated about those resources because they're hoarding.
That's the issue. So I can say that I went to a magnet elementary school, right? I went to Walt Disney Magnet, and I went to an IB program in Lincoln Park. But how many individual people have access to those things? How many people even know to take their children to those programs? I know the system here in Chicago, it's kind of like they have this neighborhood school thing, right? So you go to whatever high school is in your neighborhood, assuming you don't test out of it. I can speak to it differently because obviously, like you said, we come from a foreign background. If you have foreign parents, they've come here with the mentality of giving you a better life, right? They've seen something worse and they're like, okay, this is going to be better for you. So this is what we're going to do to put you in those circumstances. So their mindset is already completely different. It's going to be different from someone that was already born here and their whole generations of family came from here. They don't know what else they don't know what's outside of this country, outside of their immediate environment. So they don't know what to look for. All they know is that their cousin took their kid to this school, so that's where everyone is going. Whether that school is beneficial or not, that's not their prerogative. It's just what is done. It's what the circumstances allow, right? And I can say that obviously that's going to be different for our white counterparts because they're not going to even be in those neighborhoods to be going to those neighborhood schools. That there's literally neighborhoods that are designed solely for white people. Like Lincoln Park is predominantly white, Edgewater predominantly white. All of these great neighborhoods are predominantly white. So whatever schools are in that sanctity are going to be good right off the bat. So they don't have to worry about that. Even if they are taking their kids to a neighborhood school, it's not a concern because that school is going to reign well for that student, and it's going to have the resources that student needs. Whenever CPS is looking to cut off budgeting, they don't cut off budgeting on the north side. They cut off budgeting on the south side. The income paid between a teacher on the south side versus a teacher on the north side is significantly different. The resources, the books, the computers. I sell these things for a living. I can see the difference, right? I can see the budgets that schools are given. I can see the different values that are pretty much set in each different school. And that's pretty much what we're fighting for. But if we're going to fight for something, we need to make sure that we're starting from those lower points and then hearing something like that's huge. We can't say we're tackling a huge situation right at the head. You have to go for those lower things first.
Yeah.
But it's not to say like some of that isn't being done. You do have places like Georgia where it's like Georgia's all their lottery money and all their state lottery taxes go directly to providing scholarship for students that test high enough. If you have a certain GPA and you have and you've been active in your community and you apply for the scholarship, The Georgia lottery will pay for you to go to school at any Georgia school. Pick one.
I've heard
Because
about that, but how many students actually win that lottery?
That's the issue.
And then that's the other thing.
Like,
when you do win the lottery and you're a Black student and you show up to that school, all of a sudden your white counterparts are telling you, oh, you only made it here because of affirmative action. And then you're feeling like, oh, I don't even belong here because a system allowed me to get here. I didn't necessarily get here by my own trade or by my own deed. Someone had to go out of their way to let me into this school. It's not a good feeling.
It's a sense of otherness. I think as well, what it comes down to is that sense of otherness. Because I myself went to a predominantly white. I went to a boarding school, but it was a predominantly white school. In my year, there was like maybe like 20 Black people, like all the girls, so 20 Black girls. So it's that sense of like otherness, feeling like different. Because even when I had to go back and travel to where I live in general, it's just like you feel different. But then I think as well, that's like, I remember when I was because I studied in America, and I studied in like Maryland, and it's predominantly close to like Baltimore. So like when we did a lot of African American politics, when if I'm linking it back to systematic poverty, that's what you guys were talking about before, where in some areas it's that whole butterfly catchment, where there's those areas that have really good medical systems and have really good schools, but those are predominantly inhabited by white people. And then all the schools which has like shitty bus transport, like getting a bus was like, it came once every like hour. I was like, what the hell is this? Like the bus system was the transport system was terrible. The schools were maybe like schools that had, and I'm not even gonna lie, in UK, like maybe some schools, like if they're like a school in a low socioeconomic, you still have like certain resources. And when I was talking to some of the teachers, I went to like help with some of the teachers for like a community service, like some of them don't even have like, they have to buy it themselves, like books and stuff. And I was like, what the hell? This is a thing? Like, this is all a lack of resources what we're speaking at. And that's what, if we're bringing it back to what affects Black people, this is what it is. So when we talk about systematic poverty, this is what we're saying. We're saying that, it's all about the lack of resources. Your Black people are literally pushed into areas, which we've seen historically, like in St. Louis, they were pushed into that area, and they were given a lack. They were like, oh, you can live in that area, but like then crime started happening, and then all this stuff happened, and people were living in bad conditions, but people didn't care. And it's like, that's what it boils down to. Like, it's the issue of like mobilizing those local communities, and as you said, putting funding into those local communities and able to advocate and help Black people, because they're unfortunately in those areas from the 1950s, and then their children are still in those areas, and it doesn't change. It doesn't change until we improve the quality of life and improve the quality of those areas in order to make it more of a safe place and more of a place where Black people can increase their social mobility, It's a problem, so yeah.
Ashley?
But then when that happens, I'm so sorry, Ashley.
No,
go ahead.
You can go. I was gonna kind of change it, so you go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna say that, yes, we need to bring up those areas out of poverty, but then it becomes an issue of gentrification. And we have to change the entire system so that when these areas that are, the poor neighborhoods become better, the white people who are not rich but not poor don't be like, oh, well, I can afford that and it's getting better, so I'm gonna move there. Like, I live in Long Beach. We're having a huge problem with that here in Long Beach in California, because Long Beach has always been the hood by the beach. That's what they've called it forever. And now we have like smoothie spots where you can buy a $9 smoothie. No one wants that here. Like, the gentrification that's happening in Long Beach is very problematic, because the people who have lived here for decades are going to get pushed where it's dirtier, where the beach isn't nice, and those schools are going to just get the trickle down resources, and the less well-off white people will come and enjoy the beach and the $9 smoothies. So what we need is to embrace, like, change the entire system so that as the neighborhood comes up, the people who are already in it come up with it.
Yeah, 100%. But I still think that's when I talk about sorry, not to cut for just because I know you said you were changing the topic, so I was just responding to her. If you're saying mobilize those local communities, that's why you have to give autonomy to them. So it's the communities that decide what money goes into. So when I mean that, because I've also understood this, not getting me wrong, but like, it's a case where like me and my friends are saying the same thing, because we're like, oh yeah, let's put more money in. Then we thought, wait, gentrification, because like in UK it's the same. Like there's areas like Brixton, I don't know if you know, like London and too tough. yeah, for example, Brixton or Peckham, and everyone was like, they see bad areas, a lot of crime, a lot of riots. Now everyone's like, oh my God, do you want to go to Brixton to get like, oh my God, I love this new place in Brixton. It's like, bruh, like, we're not gonna do this. So the issue is that when you give autonomy to those local communities, like that's gonna, they're able to put, with those funds, they're able to say, okay, we can see that there's no youth services here, or we see that this part of I don't know, Croydon has a lack of resources, so we're gonna give more, I don't know, laptops to those children. That's what I mean. I don't mean like when we start doing stuff where we're bringing in these companies or stuff to make the community richer. When we're taking the funding, for example, out of the police, we're putting it into those services that will actually get to the people. But I understand what you mean completely, because it's really sad with gentrification, because one area, as you said, is poverty stricken, then it gets better, then it becomes like a middle class area, everyone else is kicked out, then they come to another area, then they do that, which means that people actually can't now afford to live. You know, there's even a whole documentary in UK, or they're starting it, where they're saying how a lot of people now, they're like, I don't know where to go. The only way they can really leave is now moving outside London, because they generally can't afford even the poorest places, because it's coming so rich to rent. It's like $1,000 a month. And it's like, people can't afford that. People, you know, some places in UK, if you're doing rent, I mean, you're looking at like 500, 600, but some are $1,000 a month. Like, people can't afford that. So now they're moving outside of London, and then they're going to go to another area in north of London, and that area is going to have a low socioeconomic, and it's like a whole cycle. And it's until we give it autonomy that it's not going to get better, and as well changing the system 100%. But yeah,
the entire state of California has that issue, because California in the US has been like historically one of the most expensive places, and people would move out of like San Francisco and Los Angeles to go into like the desert counties because they were more affordable, and now they're not. So those people are moving to Las Vegas and Arizona, like neighboring states. And I don't know if it's like this in the UK at all, but the problem with that is people who were originally in California, they get a little salty about the fact that they couldn't stay, and then they go to a place like Arizona or Nevada where the politics are completely different, and they get these ideas based around the people they're surrounded by, and now it's all, oh, those liberal left wings just like ruined my home and I couldn't stay there, and if it was like this more Republican, less taxes, less this, less that, then maybe I could have stayed. And then they start to blame like minority groups, and it just separates the groups even more, when it's like the minority groups weren't your enemy in the first place. It was the landlords who jacked up the rent so much for everybody that no one can afford it.